Ayman Khan here for Seconds Out. It's a pleasure to be joined by legendary sportscaster Al Bernstein. Al, great to see you. How's life?
Good to see you. Happy holidays to everybody as we close in on this holiday season, and very exciting. And boxing is providing us with lots of thrills, and already has for the year of 2025 so many good fights on tap. So yeah, so we're all doing good.
Well, let's get into the latest big fight that was just this past weekend. Undisputed rematch of sorts for the unified heavyweight titles between Oleksandr Usyk and Tyson Fury. The dust is settling on Usyk's repeat victory. What was your read on the fight, Al?
It was interesting. Fury, of course, coming in at a very high weight, much like the weight he had for the second fight he had with Deontay Wilder. And in that fight, we saw Fury really make an effort to bully Wilder and get in on him, and ultimately knocked him out and dominated the fight. Well, he came into this fight with a big weight like that, maybe even a few pounds more, but didn't really employ that strategy, did he? He fought off the front foot sometimes, but not always. And a lot of the fight was spent with him at range, sometimes even moving side to side or back. And so I thought this fight took on a very similar tone to the first one. The main difference in this one was that neither fighter was able to hurt the other one. In the first fight, of course, Usyk, especially in the ninth round when he had Fury all but out, hurt him. There were periods for Fury when he landed some of those big uppercuts in the first fight in which he hurt Usyk, or at least stunned him. That didn't really happen in this fight. So neither fighter was in trouble at any point, but there were some big punches landed. So, I thought the way the fight was fought was similar to the first fight. Not quite as exciting, but still a very solid fight. And ultimately, Oleksandr Usyk did what he always does. He closed very well in the last 6 rounds, and that ultimately is what got him the victory.
Delving into that a little bit more from the Fury perspective here, a lot was made about how Fury would approach the fight, and as you mentioned there about the weight and what that might mean for the game plan. Um, but in terms of this second fight and comparing it to the first, would you say that Fury was better in this second fight?
That's a good question. I know some people say that, but I'd be curious what you think. So in the middle, in the first fight, in those middle rounds, right, from about rounds 3 or 4 to maybe 8, right, there was a period where Fury was really winning that first fight, right, where he looked for all the world like, oh, he's got this all figured out. He's landing big shots. He's stunning Usyk a little bit. Usyk's kind of on the outside, not knowing what to do. There weren't rounds like that in this fight for Fury. He didn't fight poorly in this fight, but I would make the case he maybe fought better in the first fight. And I know that's not the normal opinion, but he didn't fight badly in this fight. But in the first fight, he was at least able to dominate a series of rounds. He didn't really do that in this fight.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And just touching on that, I feel like defensively, Fury was a lot more sound than he was, but I think that
Yeah,
also,
yes, 100%. That's absolutely true. So that in that part, he did certainly improve. Yeah,
but that was at the cost of his offense because he had to keep the gloves high, so that overhand left that came through in the ninth round
absolutely.
had to
Yeah,
be.
and be a little more defensive. So you're 100% correct. So it cost him offensively, but he didn't get hurt in the fight. And even though although he was hit with some pretty good left hands, but not like in the first fight.
Do you have appetite for a third fight after the first two?
You know, I think it would be more interesting to see them move on, to be honest. At this juncture, uh, I think the people are curious to see Usyk fight Dubois again, maybe because there was a controversy about the low blow, and then Usyk came back, of course, to stop him. But so that fight has some appeal, and Dubois is reinvented himself yet again. He's amazing. He's got such perseverance, right? Um, I joke that he's remade his brand more times than Madonna, right? Well, nobody's done it more times than Madonna, so maybe not. But and for Tyson Fury, I, I don't think it's a stretch to say that uh, people would get a kick out of him fighting Anthony Joshua in England in a big fight. I wouldn't. A trilogy wouldn't be terrible because the second fight was interesting and first one was certainly exciting. Wouldn't be bad to see a trilogy, but I could just as easily, personally, as a boxing fan, be satiated by seeing them go, fight other people.
In terms of the scoring there, Frank Warren had his shared his grievances at the judges' scoring of 116, 112 across the board, but there was also a trial of the new innovative AI judging, which had the
Mm,
scorecards. I believe it was 118, 110, wasn't it?
yeah.
Is the AI judging off to a good solid start here, Al?
No, well, I think that's too wide. I personally, I wrote that there were a lot of close rounds in this fight. So I could have, I thought the 116, 112 scores were okay. They were fine. I could have lived with the 115, 113 for Usyk as well. There were a lot of close rounds in this fight. Um, but I don't. I think that scoring that the AI did was too wide. That I don't. I can't imagine. It doesn't seem like that would be fair to Fury. But and I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of exactly how that was conceived and uh, what the mechanism is for doing it. So to me, that seems a little wide in this fight.
You've seen
But
fighters.
what do I know? I'm only a person. I'm not a machine. So I don't know.
You've seen fighters come and go much longer than I have. You've seen fighters leave their mark in the sport much longer than I have. Where does Usyk rank in amongst some of the greats in the heavyweight context in the fighters that you've seen come and go?
Well, I would look at him in total because of the cruiserweight history he made. When you look at the last however many years, 10 years or whatever of Usyk's career, and you look at this guy, he fought in an era where there were some very good cruiserweight fighters. I mean, exceptionally good cruiserweight fighters. He beat them all. Most of them he beat in their home country, right? Um, Wipes out the cruiserweight division, moves to heavyweight, and runs the gauntlet, beating bigger men, Anthony Joshua twice, Fury twice, beats Daniel Dubois, uh, and a couple of other heavyweights along the way, and shows the world that he can beat these bigger, presumably stronger men. Uh, what he's accomplished is, in my opinion, makes him a generational fighter and one of the greats. Listen, Evander Holyfield did mostly what he did, but Usyk may have done it in a more dramatic fashion. But the two of them followed almost the exact same career path, right? Becoming a dominant cruiserweight and then moving up to become heavyweight champion. I mean, the difference is that um, while Holyfield's run as a heavyweight champions were interrupted with losses, Usyk so far anyway hasn't. His reign hasn't been interrupted by losses. And one of the great things that a lot of people on social media were asking me about this. Um, when you compare Usyk and Evander Holyfield, forget comparing them as heavyweights. What would be the most fun mythical matchup of all time would be Usyk and Holyfield as cruiserweights. I mean, I watched Evander Holyfield and covered him as a cruiserweight, and also Usyk. And I can tell you, they are the two best cruiserweights that ever lived. And the difference between them, if there is a difference, is a sliver. So it would be fun to see them. That would be a great mythical matchup.
In terms of the lay of the land for both fighters, just wanted to ask, what do you think is the possibility that either fighter might see that as their final fight?
Well, going into this fight, there was certainly the possibility, depending on what happened, for either man. Now, Usyk has been very definite that he's going to fight again. And Fury, of course, was distressed by the outcome, and he, didn't think he lost the fight. Uh, so we can factor in that into how he what he said after the fight, and he wasn't definitive about his future, but there's no question Usyk is going to fight again. If there is anybody in this scenario who would be thinking about hanging it up, it might be Fury. But I don't, knowing Tyson Fury as I do, I don't think he's going to want to retire with a loss. So I am pretty sure we're going to see him again. And the other interesting thing here is, and I wrote a column that, ironically, I wrote it for Ring Magazine website, which didn't get up in time for so it'll be in the next Ring Magazine that comes out, the print edition and the digital, in which I talked about this year of heavyweights and what they've produced and where they're at. And I've written a couple of different things in the last 7 or 8 months in which talking about this heavyweight division being, most of the major heavyweights being in the twilights of their career. And this is true. And yet, every time you say that, the old guard produces another big fight, right? And another good fight. Like this fight was a good fight. It wasn't as scintillating as their first, but it was certainly worth watching, and it was a good heavyweight fight. So I'm not sure how many more last gasp efforts we have with the Furies and the Usyks and the Joshuas, maybe even Wilder, although I think at this juncture he's probably not a major player, but we got Joseph Parker, who is kind of not quite in that old guard, but he's facing Daniel Dubois in February. So who knows? Joseph Parker is no easy out for Daniel Dubois, that's for sure. So before they give way to some of the younger heavyweights who are on the rise, we may still see some more from this old guard of the heavyweight division. And what they produced over the last decade was good. It was the heavyweight division when the Klitschko's were dominating was, especially more so in America, and Americans have a jingoistic view of everything, right? If it doesn't involve a lot of Americans, somehow it's diminished. That's just the way they are. So just a fact. And so the heavyweight division for Americans, at least, was, and maybe a little bit for other people because of the domination of the Klitschko's, was not as interesting, not as kinetic. Things didn't change a lot. So this period with Wilder, Fury, Joshua, then Usyk, and other players in the mix, the guys like Derek Chisora there and Parker there to create exciting, wild fights. Zhang, you could go on. Joe Joyce, who produced moments of thrilling action. You put that whole group all together, and I'll tell you what, you got to say they produced a lot of excitement for boxing fans.
Talking of Usyk's next steps, and of course, as you mentioned there, Daniel Dubois took to the mic and maybe hijacked Usyk's moment a
Yeah,
little bit. But I
that
guess
was an odd moment, wasn't it?
it was a little bit odd there, but I guess he's trying to set up his own rematch in the future. But yeah, the lay of the land is Usyk, as you mentioned there. He said he will continue and wants to continue. Maybe Dubois stands in his way next. But there was also the talk of the potential move back down to cruiserweight as
Yeah.
Usyk has admitted that he doesn't like eating up to the heavyweight weight. Do you see many competitors to a potential second undisputed crown at cruiserweight, and also the thread of Artur Beterbiev after his light heavyweight rematch for the undisputed titles with Bivol, maybe moving up to cruiserweight to fight Usyk?
Yeah. Yes, there are. Only Usyk knows how easy or hard it would be for him to get back down to 200 pounds. If it is not at age 37 an impossible task, I find it utterly fascinating for him to go back to cruiserweight. There's the Australian Jai, who's a terrific fighter. Zurdo Ramirez, who just won a title again. You mentioned the possibility of somebody like Beterbiev coming up in weight. What's better than a rematch from their amateur days, right? Why wouldn't anyone want to see that fight, right? I think that would be great. So if he can get down to that weight, to be perfectly frank with you, that's actually the most appealing thing to me personally as a fan. I, I would love to see that. It would be fantastic. Um, and and of course, the issue would be in making weight, and he is 37 years of age. So we don't know what his shelf life is in terms of the excellence he's shown. He certainly looked very good the other night. And the other thing that is interesting is if he comes back down to 200, now he's not facing these big mountains in front of him. He's looking at men his size. He's back in a comfort zone, if it's a comfort zone, if it's not impossible to lose the weight. And I suspect it might not be for him. I don't know why, but I feel like maybe he never got real big. This was his biggest weight as a heavyweight. And if he took the time to lose it over, enough time to allow him to do it, and how historical would that be? How staggering would it be if at age 37, Usyk would come down to the cruiserweight division? Even if he won one title, it would be spectacular. And he's not going to be satisfied with that. He's not going to fight anything other than title matches. So if he wins one title, he'll go after the other champion, who will be happy to fight him because there'll be more money in that fight than there would be in another cruiserweight fight, right? For them. So how astonishing would it be if 38-year-old and 39-year-old Oleksandr Usyk is getting ready to retire after winning the cruiserweight division, dominating the heavyweight division, coming back to dominate the cruiserweight division, and retires undefeated? It would literally make his career one of the greatest ever in the history of. He's already got one that's way up there. It would make his career one of the greatest ever in the sport of boxing.
Absolutely, Al. Well said. Al, I've run out of questions for you, so thank you so much for joining me on Seconds Out. Already looking forward to our next conversation, but for now, I wish you all the best, and I hope you have a prosperous.
Anytime, just give me a call, and we'll make it happen. And happy holidays to you and everybody watching. I hope we have a peaceful year in 2025. And for boxing fans, I know it's going to be a good year because there's so many good fights on the horizon that I know it's going to be a lot of fun.
Completely agree. Thank you so much, Al.